March 1943, Essen, Ruhr Valley. The night sky explodes in ghostly green light as German searchlights sweep the clouds at 20,000 feet. In the flak observation posts, experienced gunners who've shot down dozens of British bombers stop, confused. On the Würzburg radar screens, the returns don't make sense. Massive signals, slow-moving, flying in tight formation, perfect targets. But when the Bf-110 night fighters intercept, they find something impossible. 4 engine bombers flying at 250 miles per hour, with dorsal turrets spinning 360 degrees, spitting 7,000 rounds per minute. Within 15 minutes, 6 German fighters are falling in flames. The Luftwaffe radio crackles with veteran pilots screaming the same word, unmöglich, impossible. The Royal Air Force had a problem. Their Wellington and Stirling bombers were being massacred. A 7% loss rate per mission meant no crew would complete the 30 operation cycle. The solution would be the heaviest, slowest, most vulnerable bomber ever built. That would become the deadliest of the war. Before I tell you how a flying barn ended up destroying the industrial heart of Nazi Germany, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you don't want to miss how the Luftwaffe lost 300 fighters trying to stop the bomber they called a joke. In 1942, Bomber Command was bleeding out. Medium bombers flew too low, 11,500 feet, to escape flak, too high to navigate visually. Maximum speed of 230 miles per hour made them sitting ducks. Defensive armament, turrets with .303 machine guns, effective range 300 meters, facing 20mm cannons on Bf-110s with 600-meter reach. Average loss rate, 5.2% per mission. The mathematics were brutal. 30 missions times 5.2% equals 156% casualty rate. No crew would statistically survive a complete tour. The German plan was elegant. Würzburg radar detected bombers at 50 miles, vectored Bf-110s equipped with Liechtenstein radar to within 800 meters of prey. The Kamm-Huber line of interception zones covered every route. Effectiveness? In October 1942, 9.1% of British bombers didn't return from Cologne. You're a Wellington pilot in late 1942. You climb into your aircraft knowing the statistics. 5.2% loss rate doesn't sound terrible on paper until you do the math. 30 missions to complete your tour. By mission 20, statistically, you're already dead. Your navigator knows it, your gunners know it, everyone knows it. But you climb in anyway because someone has to stop Hitler's war machine. The bombers flew in streams at night, hoping darkness would hide them. But German radar didn't care about darkness. The Würzburg stations lit up their screens 50 miles out. Controllers vectored night fighters to within half a mile. Then the Liechtenstein radar on the Bf-110s took over, guiding them to within 800 meters. At that range, with 20mm cannons against your .303 machine guns, you were already dead. You just didn't know it yet. The standard procedure was simple in theory, impossible in practice. Fly at 11,500 feet, high enough to avoid light flak, low enough to navigate by landmarks. Maintain 230 miles per hour. When searchlights caught you, dive and weave. When fighters attacked, your gunners fired their .303s and prayed. The problem was physics. A fighter at 350 miles per hour attacking a bomber at 230 miles per hour had all the time in the world to line up the perfect shot. British manuals were clear. Bombers need speed and altitude. But physics was cruel. Bigger engines meant more weight, meant less speed. More armor meant fewer bombs. The Bomber Command was trapped in a mathematical dead end. Engineers calculated every possible combination. More guns? Too heavy. Faster engines? Not enough power. Higher altitude? Engines couldn't breathe. Every solution created 2 new problems. The Wellington carried 4,500 pounds of bombs 1,200 miles. Good numbers. Except 7% of them never came back. 7 out of every 100 crews. Every mission. Do the math. After 15 missions, half your squadron is gone. After 30 missions, everyone you started with is dead or captured. The RAF was trading aircrew for minimal damage to German industry. Something had to change. German night fighter tactics evolved into deadly efficiency. The Bf-110 pilot positioned his aircraft slightly below and behind the bomber, the blind spot under the tail. At 400 meters, he opened fire with twin 20mm cannons and 4 7.92mm machine guns. A 3-second burst put 90 explosive shells and 180 bullets into the bomber's belly. Fuel tanks ignited, wings separated. 7 men died in flames or freezing air. This happened 40 times a night over Germany. Flak was almost worse. German 88mm batteries formed walls of exploding steel at predicted altitudes. Bombers flew straight and level on their bomb runs, unable to maneuver. Gunners below calculated trajectories, set fuses, fired salvos. At 11,500 feet, shells reached you in 8 seconds. You heard the crump, crump, crump of explosions, felt the aircraft shudder, watched holes appear in wings, prayed nothing hit the fuel tanks. 20% of bomber losses came from flak alone. The numbers told the story the Air Ministry didn't want to hear. In 1941, RAF Bomber Command flew 30,000 sorties, dropped 32,000 tons of bombs, lost 1,400 aircraft and 9,800 crew. The Butt Report in August 1941 revealed the devastating truth. Only 33% of bombs fell within 5 miles of their targets. The RAF was sacrificing thousands of men to put bombs in empty fields. The entire strategic bombing campaign was failing. Air Chief Marshal Charles Portal faced an impossible choice in late 1941. Continue with existing bombers and watch Bomber Command bleed to death? Or gamble on something radically different, something that contradicted every principle of bomber design, something that looked on paper like suicide. He chose the gamble. He chose Roy Chadwick's Flying Barn. Roy Chadwick, 49 years old, chief designer at Avro and Company. Appearance: worn wool sweater, pipe always lit, hands stained with engine oil. Background: started designing biplanes in 1911. Created the failed Lancaster original, a twin-engine bomber rejected in 1940. Peculiar hobby: cricket fanatic, designed aircraft with the same patience as a batsman studying the opposing bowler. November 1940. The Air Ministry rejects his Manchester design due to defective Vulture engines. Failure rate: 61%. Chadwick has 48 hours to save the program or watch his company go bankrupt. He makes a radical decision: ignore the official requirements entirely. Takes the failed Manchester, rips out the 2 Vulture engines, installs 4 Merlins, the same engine powering the Spitfire. Increases wingspan from 78 feet to 102 feet. On paper, he creates the heaviest bomber ever built, 30 tons fully loaded, the slowest at 280 miles per hour maximum, with the worst power-to-weight ratio in the RAF. His superiors call it Chadwick's Folly. The idea violated 3 sacred dogmas of military aviation. Heresy number 1: sacrifice speed for payload capacity. The Lancaster would carry 14,000 pounds of bombs versus 4,500 pounds in the Wellington. Critics said a giant, slow target. Heresy number 2: heavy armament in all directions. 8.303 machine guns in 4 powered turrets. Nose, dorsal, ventral, tail. FN-50 tail turrets with hydraulic rotation at 180 degrees per second. Critique: dead weight stealing speed. Heresy number 3: fly in a bomber stream, a concentrated current of 700-plus aircraft in 90 minutes, not dispersed. Saturate defenses instead of avoiding them. Air Marshal Slessor's critique: putting all eggs in one aerial suicide basket. Chadwick worked with improvised resources. Merlin engines borrowed from Spitfire production lines. Churchill personally authorized it. Gun turrets adapted from naval vessels. Unique oval fuselage using geodetic construction. Chadwick stole the idea from Victorian railway bridges. The design looked wrong. Too big, too slow, too vulnerable. Every aviation expert said it would never work. But Chadwick had done something no one else considered. He optimized for the mission, not the journey. The Wellington needed speed to survive the flight to Germany. The Lancaster needed payload to make the flight worthwhile. If you're going to lose 5% of your force every mission anyway, better lose them after they've dropped 14,000 pounds each instead of 4,500. The math was cold but correct. First flight, January 9, 1941. Test pilot Shorty Thorne takes the prototype up from Woodford Aerodrome. Maximum speed, 287 miles per hour, 12 miles below promised. Ceiling, 21,000 feet, 5,000 feet below specification. Range, 1,600 miles with maximum load versus 1,200 miles in the Wellington. The aircraft handled smoothly, controls responsive, engine stable. But on paper, it failed every metric except payload capacity. Official verdict? Deficient in all parameters except bomb carrying capacity, not recommended for production. The Air Ministry's Technical Evaluation Board listed 17 specific failures. Too slow to evade fighters. Ceiling too low for safety. Wingspan of 102 feet made it a mess of radar target. Fuel consumption of 216 gallons per hour made logistics impossible. The board recommended cancellation. Air Marshal Arthur Harris, future commander of Bomber Command, in February 1941, a flying elephant, not fast enough to run, not high enough to hide. He wasn't being dismissive, he was being accurate. Every metric suggested the Lancaster would be massacred. Speed, 50 miles slower than the Ju-88. Ceiling, 6,500 feet below safe altitude. Radar signature, enormous. The bomber looked like a death trap. Specific technical criticisms poured in. The wingspan made formation flying dangerous. The weight meant slow climbs, vulnerable during takeoff and assembly. The 4 Merlin engines consumed fuel at rates that strained supply chains. The geodetic construction was expensive and slow to build. Test pilots from Wellington squadrons refused transfers. I'd rather have a fast plane I can maneuver. The derogatory nickname came fast. The barn, a flying barn. Slow, big, unable to dodge. Wellington veterans looked at it and saw a coffin with wings. The nickname stuck even among Avro employees. They called the prototype the Big Barn, with a mixture of affection and dread. No one wanted to be the first crew to take it into combat. Who gave it the green light? Air Chief Marshal Charles Portal, pressured by Churchill after the devastating Butt Report in August 1941 showed only 33% of bombs fell within 5 miles of targets. Portal made a calculation. Destroying targets matters more than preserving bombers. If the Lancaster could triple the payload, losing them at the same rate as Wellington's still meant 3 times the damage. Cold mathematics, brutal logic, but it was logic. Timeline. Initial rejection in January 1941. Conditional approval in March 1941. First operational unit in December 1941. Total 11 months of bureaucratic warfare. 11 months of Chadwick fighting his own Air Force. 11 months of revised proposals, wind tunnel tests, and promises that yes, this flying barn could actually fight. First operational test, March 3, 1942. Mining mission near Heligoland, 44 Squadron. Pilot, Wing Commander Rodley Carr. 4 Lancasters, night flight, 500 miles over the North Sea. Immediate problem. Turrets froze at -35 degrees Celsius. The hydraulic fluid turned to sludge. Gunners cranked the turrets manually, muscles screaming. Improvised solution. Mechanics added glycerol to hydraulic lines, copied from Soviet tanks. It worked, barely. Real-world performance measured on that first mission told the true story. Cruising speed, 210 miles per hour versus 190 miles per hour in the Wellington. Not fast, but faster. Ceiling with full load, 19,000 feet, enough to avoid light flak. Rate of climb, 250 feet per minute, half of what was promised, but acceptable. Range with 14,000 pounds, 1,660 miles. Access to Berlin and back. The numbers weren't spectacular, they were just good enough. March 10, 1942, raid on Essen. A single Lancaster, flying alone, gets intercepted by a Bf-110. Standard German tactic, approach from below and behind, into the bomber's blind spot. But the Lancaster had something the Wellington didn't, a ventral turret. Rear gunner Sergeant Red Hughes opens fire at 600 yards, double the range of Wellington guns. The Bf-110 closes confidently and explodes at 400 yards. German pilot never knew what hit him. The captured German report arrived weeks later through intelligence channels. New British bomber possesses unexpectedly long-range defensive armament. Recommend revised attack procedures. That was the moment. That single engagement. One gunner, one German fighter. Proof that Chadwick's flying barn had teeth. Additional testing through March and April 1942 revealed the Lancaster's hidden strength. The turrets weren't just numerous, they were coordinated. A fighter attacking from any angle faced immediate return fire. The dorsal turret covered the top arc. The tail turret covered the rear. The ventral turret covered below. The nose turret covered forward approaches. German fighters were used to bombers with blind spots. The Lancaster had almost none. Engine reliability proved better than expected. The Merlin engines, already proven in Spitfires, ran smoothly at bomber cruise settings. Maintenance crews loved them. Familiar, well-documented, parts readily available. The four-engine redundancy meant losing one engine wasn't catastrophic. Lancasters regularly returned on 3 engines, sometimes 2. Wellingtons with one engine out usually didn't return at all. The bomb bay design was revolutionary. A single cavernous space, 33 feet long, unobstructed. It could swallow enormous bombs or hundreds of smaller ones. Cookie bombs, 4,000-pound blast bombs that ripped roofs off buildings, fit perfectly. Incendiaries by the thousands. The Wellington's divided bomb bay forced compromises. The Lancaster's open bay meant creativity. Bomb loads could be customized for specific targets. By late April 1942, 44 Squadron had flown 23 operational missions with Lancasters. Loss rate, 2.9%. The Wellington squadrons flying the same routes, 6.7% loss rate. The difference was undeniable. The flying barn was surviving twice as well as the supposedly superior bombers. Air Ministry analysts ran the numbers 3 times, certain there was an error. There wasn't. The Lancaster worked. Wing Commander Rodley Carr's assessment after the first month: she's heavy, she's slow, she's about as maneuverable as a loaded truck, but she carries twice the bombs, takes twice the punishment, and brings the boys home. I'll take her over a Wellington any day. That became the unofficial motto of Lancaster crews. She brings the boys home. Operation Millennium, May 30th to 31st, 1942. Cologne. The point where everything changed. Air Marshal Arthur Harris, now commanding Bomber Command, plans the audacious gamble. 1,000 bomber raid. Saturate German defenses with sheer numbers. The bomber stream concept, criticized as suicidal, gets its first real test. 22:47 hours. 1,047 bombers take off from bases across England. 602 Wellingtons, 131 Halifaxes, 73 Lancasters, assorted others. The plan? All aircraft over target in 90 minutes. Concentrated fury. Overwhelm radar. Overwhelm fighters. Overwhelm flak. It's never been attempted before. Harris is betting the entire campaign on this single night. 23:55 hours. First Lancasters cross the Dutch coast at 20,000 feet. Würzburg radar stations light up. German controllers confused. The radar returns indicate bombers the size of 3 Wellingtons together. They vector 18 Bf-110s for priority interception. The German night fighter force is about to learn what coordinated defensive fire really means. You're in Lancaster S. Sugar, pilot Flight Officer Leslie Manser, flying in the lead wave. Below, the Dutch coast slides past in darkness. Around you, the sky fills with navigation lights. Hundreds of bombers, all heading east. Radio discipline is strict. No chatter. Only essential calls. Your flight engineer monitors 4 Merlin engines, all running smoothly. Your navigator plots the course. Your gunners scan the darkness, fingers on triggers. 0047 hours. Cologne appears ahead. The city is lit by early Pathfinder flares, green and red markers showing the aim point. Searchlights stab upward, probing. Flak begins. Orange bursts at predicted altitudes. Your bomb aimer directs, left, left, steady. You hold the Lancaster straight and level, the longest 30 seconds of your life. Flak shrapnel clangs against the fuselage. The aircraft shudders. Then the searchlights catch you. Blinding white light fills the cockpit. Your world turns into searing brightness. Instinct says dive. Training says hold steady. You hold steady. The dorsal turret opens fire, red tracers arcing into darkness. A Bf-110 is coming in. Your gunner, Sergeant Hughes, tracks it smoothly. The German fighter, painted night black, climbs toward you expecting an easy kill from below. But you have a ventral turret. The German pilot has never faced that before. Hauptmann Ludwig Becker, veteran night fighter ace with 27 kills, positions for the classic attack. Slightly below, slightly behind. He never reaches firing range. The ventral turret erupts, 1,200 rounds per minute. Becker's Bf-110 takes hits in the left engine, the cockpit, the wing root. It tumbles, spinning, trailing fire. 27th kill became his last flight. 1:15 hours. Peak of the attack. 73 Lancasters dump 580 tons in 12 minutes. Each Lancaster carries one 4,000-pound cookie, a bomb that rips roofs off buildings, plus hundreds of incendiaries. The Wellington needed 3 missions to carry the same load. Cologne below transforms into an inferno. 2,000 buildings destroyed, 600 acres burned, 469 dead, 45,000 homeless. Results measured at dawn, 3.9% loss rate overall. The RAF traded 41 bombers for massive damage to Germany's 4th largest city. Of 73 Lancasters, only 2 lost, 2.7% loss rate. Wellington's 43 of 602 lost, 7.1% loss rate. The difference was stark. The Lancaster survived almost 3 times better than the bomber it was supposed to replace. German radio intercept, decoded at Bletchley Park. New British bomber type, heavily resistant, heavily armed, impossible to attack from below. Recommend immediate tactical revision. The Luftwaffe had just learned that the flying barn wasn't a joke. It was a fortress. German intelligence report, Luftwaffe IC NR-2456, June 3, 1942. Heavy 4-engine bomber of unknown type. Estimated wingspan 30 to 32 meters. Defensive armament superior to any Allied bomber encountered. Speed surprisingly high for size. Codename Fliegende Scheune, flying barn. Ironic, given effectiveness. The Germans meant it as mockery. It became a title of respect. General Josef Kammhuber, commander of German night air defense, in a classified memo dated June 8, 1942. The concentrated stream tactic transforms each fighter into bait. Our pilots report that when attacking one Lancaster, 3 others appear. It is disconcerting. The Kammhuber line was designed for dispersed raids. This concentrated approach saturates our interception zones. Recommend fundamental tactical revision. Hauptmann Heinz Wolfgang Schnaufer, who would become the highest-scoring night fighter ace with 121 victories after his first Lancaster encounter in July 1942, the Lancaster is not like the Wellington. You must kill it on the first pass. If you miss, the turrets will find you. I lost 2 wingmen learning this. The British have built something formidable. German countermeasures developed rapidly. July 1942. Bf-110s receive ventral armor plating, adds 400 pounds, reduces speed by 8 miles per hour. September 1942. Accelerated development of Ju-88C6 with Schrägeblasik diagonal cannons for attacking from below. November 1942. Kammhuber line expanded from 60 to 120 interception zones. Cost, 2,000 additional flak guns diverted from the Eastern Front. Every countermeasure stole resources from other fronts. The German nickname evolved, from Scheune, derogatory, to der Viermotor, the four-engine, a term of respect, almost reverence. Night fighter pilots learned to identify Lancasters by silhouette and avoid them when possible. Better to hunt the remaining Wellingtons and Stirlings. The Lancaster was trouble. Luftwaffe tactical bulletins from late 1942 show the psychological impact. Fighter pilots reporting mechanical issues increased by 34%. Mission refusals climbed. One intercepted radio transmission, BF-110 to ground control, contact with four-engine, negative, breaking off, too many turrets. The Hunter had become prey. German propaganda tried to minimize the Lancaster's impact. British terror bombers bring only civilian casualties, military insignificance. But internal military reports told a different story. Production disruptions from Cologne raid, 17 factories offline for 3 weeks. Worker morale in Ruhr Valley declining sharply. Air raid precautions consuming resources equivalent to an entire panzer division. The Lancaster was winning through arithmetic. Production explosion tells the story. 1942, 268 Lancasters built. 1943, 2,126 units. 1944, 3,039 units, peak production. Total wartime production, 7,377 Lancasters. Factories working triple shifts. Avro plants in Manchester, Chadderton, Woodford running 24 hours. Shadow factories across Britain converted from civilian production. The flying barn nobody wanted became the bomber everyone needed. Variants emerged for specific needs. Lancaster Mk2, Bristol Hercules radial engines to solve Merlin shortages. Mk3, Packard-built Merlins manufactured under license in the United States. Mkx, Canadian-built version with simplified equipment. Each variant kept the core philosophy: maximum payload, maximum survivability, adequate speed. Field modifications proved revolutionary. May 1943, 617 Squadron modifies Lancasters to carry the Upkeep bouncing bomb, 9,250 pounds. Operation Chastise, the Dambusters raid. 19 specially modified Lancasters attack the Merne, Ada and Sorpe dams. The modifications remove mid-upper turrets, add special bomb release mechanisms. Wing Commander Guy Gibson leads. 8 Lancasters lost, but 2 dams breached. Germany diverts 50,000 workers to repair damage. The Lancaster proved adaptable beyond original design. September 1944, the Grand Slam modification. 22,000-pound earthquake bomb requires removing all defensive armament except tail turrets. The Lancaster B1 special variant is born. Empty weight 41,000 pounds. Loaded weight 72,000 pounds. It shouldn't fly, but it does. March 14, 1945, squadron leader Charles Jock Calder drops the first Grand Slam on Bielefeld Viaduct. The bomb penetrates deep before detonating. Seismic shockwave collapses the viaduct. The flying barn had become a flying siege weapon. Training programs expanded geometrically. In 1942, converting pilots to Lancasters took 6 weeks. By 1944, with improved methods, 4 weeks. Heavy conversion units at bases like Wigsley and Shireston graduated 2,400 complete crews annually. Pilots learned to handle 30 tons of aircraft. Flight engineers memorized 400 switches and gauges. Navigators mastered GH navigation systems. Gunners practiced tracking on moving targets. Every crew member essential. One weak link meant death. Tactics evolved in combat. Early Lancaster crews flew straight and level during bomb runs, vulnerable but necessary for accuracy. Late 1943, corkscrew maneuver developed. When searchlights caught you, violent dive to port, climbing turn to starboard, repeated. Made bombing less accurate but dramatically improved survival. Loss rate dropped from 4.1% to 2.9% after adoption.
The tactic spread through informal networks, crews teaching crews. The gardening missions, mine-laying in enemy waters, became Lancaster specialties. Low-level flight, precise navigation, dangerous proximity to coastal defenses. Mines dropped by parachute into harbors, shipping channels, river mouths. From 1942 to 1945, Lancasters laid 47,270 sea mines. German minesweepers couldn't keep pace. Shipping losses to mines, 751 vessels totaling 1.4 million tons. The Lancaster was strangling German supply lines from above. Notable aircraft achieved legendary status. Lancaster EE-139 of 103 Squadron completed 140 operational missions, the absolute survival record. Crews called her Lucky Lady. Mechanics pampered her. Pilots requested her specifically. She survived 3 engine failures, 2 flak hits, and 1 mid-air collision. Finally retired in 1945, preserved as a monument. 42 other Lancasters exceeded 100 missions each. Cumulative statistics 1942 to 1945 paint the picture. 156,000 missions flown. 608,612 tons of bombs dropped, 2/3 of all Bomber Command tonnage. Average loss rate 2.8% versus 4.7% RAF average. The Lancaster didn't just survive better, it delivered more destruction per aircraft lost than any other Allied bomber. The arithmetic was merciless and undeniable. Strategic impact measured in brutal numbers. Confirmed victories, Lancaster gunners shot down 1,835 German night fighters. Major targets destroyed, 90% of Germany's 45 largest cities significantly damaged. Industrial sabotage. Refinery bombings reduced fuel production by 87% from March 1944 to April 1945. Every gallon not produced was a Tiger tank immobilized, a Bf-109 grounded. The Lancaster was winning the war of arithmetic. Forced tactical changes showed the deeper impact. August 1943, Luftwaffe abandons Kamm-Huber doctrine, adopts Wilde Sau, wild boar. Freelance night fighter hunts instead of controlled interception. The change acknowledged the bomber stream worked. February 1944, 70% of German night fighters redeployed from Eastern Front to Reichsdefense.
Those fighters weren't stopping Soviet advances. The Lancaster created strategic cascade effects. Resources diverted told the economic story. 1.2 million men in civilian air raid defense. 55% of ammunition production dedicated to flak versus 20% in 1941. 2,200 heavy 88mm guns that weren't at Kursk or Normandy. Germany bled resources defending its cities. Every gun pointing upward was a gun not shooting at tanks. Every fighter defending the Reich was a fighter not protecting Rommel. The Lancaster didn't just drop bombs. It forced Germany into a losing resource allocation. Winston Churchill, Speech to Parliament, September 21, 1943. The Lancaster has proven that well-designed bombers, bravely operated, can defend themselves while devastating the enemy's industrial heart. This aircraft embodies the British spirit, pragmatic, resilient, and lethally effective. Churchill loved the Lancaster because it embodied everything he valued. It worked, it was British, and it hurt Germany. Albert Speer, Hitler's armaments minister, in his memoirs written at Spandau prison, "The bombing campaign, particularly after 1943, was the severest blow to our war production. Had it begun earlier, it might have prevented German armament altogether. By 1944, we spent more resources defending cities than building tanks. The British bomber offensive didn't win the war alone, but it made German victory impossible." The Schweinfurt raid analysis by German military planners in October 1943 shows the Lancaster's strategic value. British bombers hit ball-bearing factories. Production dropped 34%. Recovery took 4 months. German planners noted, "The Lancaster formations demonstrated ability to strike deep targets with greater payload than previously possible. Our industrial dispersal plans must accelerate." Germany was forced to scatter factories, reducing efficiency, increasing costs. The Lancaster dictated German industrial policy. Direct technological descendants flowed from Chadwick's design. The Avro Lincoln, immediate evolution, entered service 1945, used until 1963. Same philosophy: heavy payload, long range, acceptable speed. The Boeing B-52 Stratofortress, spiritual successor. First flight 1952, still in service today. Why? Because the Lancaster proved the concept. A heavy, adaptable platform with modifiable payload beats specialized speed. The B-52 has been bombing targets for 73 years using Lancaster's core philosophy. The bomb truck concept became doctrine. Maximum payload capacity more valuable than maximum speed. Modern strike aircraft from A-6 Intruder to F-15E Strike Eagle follow this principle. Speed helps, but delivery capacity matters more. The Lancaster taught air forces worldwide: if you're going into danger regardless, bring the maximum possible ordnance. Doctrines absorbed globally. Saturation versus evasion. Operation Linebacker II, Vietnam 1972, used cells of B-52s inspired by the bomber stream. Concentrated attacks overwhelm defenses better than dispersed raids. Heavy defensive armament. B-17 and B-29 adopted 10 to 12 machine guns after Lancaster's success. Mission flexibility. Lancaster variants carried torpedoes to 22,000-pound bombs to electronic countermeasures. Modern multi-role combat aircraft inherit that adaptability. Later conflicts proved the design's longevity. Korean War. Avro Lincolns, Lancaster descendants, flew 3,000 missions. Malayan Emergency, 1950s, Lancasters used in counterinsurgency until 1956. Suez Crisis, 1956, final Lancaster combat missions. The design Chadwick sketched in desperation in 1940 saw action for 16 years. Few aircraft achieve such service life. Modern systems carry Lancaster DNA. C-130 Hercules, adaptable platform, payload over speed, continuous upgrades, in service since 1956. AC-130 gunship, direct descendant of flying artillery philosophy. Multiple weapons, devastating firepower, except vulnerability for effectiveness. The Lancaster principles live on in platforms designed decades after the war ended. Soviet designers studied captured Lancasters intensively. The Tu-4 Bull, Russia's first strategic bomber, incorporated lessons from British bombers, including payload optimization and defensive turret placement. American engineers analyzed Lancaster structures for metal fatigue resistance. The geodetic construction influenced post-war civilian aircraft design. Enemy and ally both learned from Chadwick's desperate innovation. Roy Chadwick never saw the end of the war his barn helped win. August 23, 1947. He was 54 years old, flying in an Avro Tudor prototype, testing a new airliner design. The aircraft crashed near Woodford Aerodrome during a test flight. Chadwick died instantly. The man who created the most successful British bomber of World War II died testing a peacetime passenger plane. The irony was profound. His funeral drew thousands. Avro employees, RAF crews, Air Ministry officials. Wing Commander Guy Gibson's widow attended. Pilots who'd flown 30 missions in his bombers stood in the rain. Chadwick's legacy was visible in the crowd. Men who should have been dead, saved by his flying barn. They came to honor the quiet engineer who'd given them a weapon that brought them home. No knighthood came during his life. No grand public recognition. Chadwick was a designer, not a publicist. He worked problems, not promotions. The Lancaster was his statement. 7,377 aircraft built. 156,000 missions flown. Countless lives saved because his bomber could absorb punishment and keep flying. The recognition came posthumously. 2019 Royal Mail commemorative stamp. 2020 statue at Avro Heritage Museum. 70 years late, but permanent. Wing Commander Guy Gibson, leader of the Dambusters raid, died in combat September 1944, age 26. Bar to his Distinguished Service Order, Victoria Cross. Legend in his lifetime. Short life, maximum impact. Lancaster pilot until the end. He chose to keep flying combat missions when he could have taken a desk job. The Lancaster gave him the platform for his most famous raid. He died in a Mosquito, but he's forever associated with the Lancaster. Flight Officer Leslie Manser, pilot of S. Sugar during the Cologne raid, died on that same mission. After his Lancaster was damaged, he held the aircraft steady so his crew could bail out. The bomber crashed before he could escape. Victoria Cross, posthumous, age 21. His crew survived because he stayed at the controls. The Lancaster gave him the chance to save 6 men. He took it. The bomber brought the boys home, even when the pilot couldn't come with them. Sergeant Red Hughes, the gunner who shot down Hauptmann Becker over Cologne, completed his tour of 30 operations. Awarded Distinguished Flying Medal. Survived the war. Returned to civilian life as a postman in Leeds. Died in 1982, age 61. Never spoke much about the war. Colleagues didn't know he'd shot down 14 German fighters from Lancaster turrets until his obituary revealed it. Typical British understatement from the men who made the Lancaster deadly. Approximately 125,000 men flew in Lancaster crews during the war. 55,573 died, 44.4% casualty rate. The Lancaster reduced losses compared to other bombers, but couldn't eliminate the fundamental danger. Night bombing Germany was lethal. The men knew the statistics. They climbed in anyway. They trusted the Lancaster more than any other bomber. But trust doesn't stop flak or fighters. They died in their thousands, but the Lancaster meant more of them lived than would have in Wellingtons. The survivors formed bonds that lasted lifetimes. Lancaster Bomber Crew Associations met annually in Britain, Canada, Australia. They gathered at pubs, shared stories, honored the missing. In 2015, at the 70th anniversary reunion, only 240 attended, average age 93. By 2020, fewer than 50 remained. The last Lancaster pilots are dying now. The final bomber crew reunions have happened. Soon, no one alive will remember sitting in a Lancaster cockpit, flying through flak, watching German fighters fall. March 1943, Essen, where we began. The searchlights sweep the sky searching for flying barns. But now German gunners know the truth. Each bright spot on radar can carry destruction equivalent to 10 old bombers. The nicknames changed. Fliegende Scheune became Der Lonk, said with cautious respect by fighter pilots who learned to fear it. The irony is delicious. The bomber, ridiculed for being too big, too slow, too vulnerable, ended up flying more missions, surviving more combat, and carrying more destruction than any other Allied aircraft in World War II. Arthur Harris's Flying Elephant became the hammer that broke Germany's industrial wall. The Lancaster proved something military planners forgot repeatedly. Specifications don't win wars. Results do. Speed on paper doesn't matter if you can't carry enough bombs. Altitude capability is meaningless if you can't defend yourself. The Lancaster was deficient in all parameters according to the initial evaluation. But it won the war that mattered, the one measured in enemy factories destroyed, not in maximum MPH achieved. German night fighter pilots who survived the war remembered the Lancaster with professional respect. Heinz Wolfgang Schnaufer, 121 victories, interviewed in 1970. The Lancaster was the opponent I respected most. Fast enough to be hard to catch, tough enough to absorb hits, armed enough to shoot back effectively. If I could choose to never face anything again, it would be a Lancaster in a bomber stream at night. They were formidable. The legacy extends beyond military hardware. The Lancaster proved that unglamorous, practical solutions beat elegant, theoretical ones. Engineers worldwide learned, optimize for the mission, not the metrics. Don't build what looks good on paper. Build what works in combat. This lesson repeats in every field.
Simple, robust, effective beats complex, fragile, impressive. Chadwick taught that to the world in aluminum and bombs. 7,377 Lancasters flew with Chadwick's signature embedded in every rivet. Proof that sometimes the impossible solution is just the one no one had courage to try. The flying barn that experts rejected saved Britain when Britain needed saving most. It dropped more bombs, survived more missions, and brought home more crews than anyone thought possible. In the night sky of 1943, when a Lancaster crossed German defenses with 8 machine guns spitting fire and a bomb bay full of death, the Germans learned a lesson echoing through all future wars. Never underestimate a barn that can fly, fight, and win. The Lancaster wasn't the fastest bomber, wasn't the highest flying,
Wasn't the most glamorous. It was simply the most effective weapon in the arsenal of democracy at the moment democracy needed it most. And that, in the end, is all that mattered.